The farmhouse was quiet that evening, wrapped in the soft hum of insects and the occasional distant hoot of an owl. My name is Aiden, and I was 17 at the time, living with my parents and our golden retriever, Bruno, in a rural part of Georgia. Our house sat on a large patch of land filled with trees, overgrown grass, and a small vegetable garden my mother tended every morning. It was peaceful, usually. That week, my parents had left to visit my grandmother in another town. I had insisted on staying behind. Exams were coming up, and I needed to study, or so I told them. In reality, I just wanted a break from the noise of extended family visits. I spent the first 2 days alone, enjoying the silence, the solitude, and Bruno's comforting company. Bruno was a strong, well-trained dog with a golden coat and warm eyes. He never barked without reason and had an uncanny ability to sense when something wasn't right. That's why I felt so at ease, even though I was technically alone. On the third evening, just after sunset, I stepped out into the backyard with a cup of coffee in hand. The moon was full, casting a silver sheen over the tall grass and the old wooden fence at the back of our property. The breeze was cool, and for a moment, I just stood there, sipping and breathing it all in. Bruno came padding up beside me, nuzzling my hand before sitting down. His ears twitched, and he sniffed the air alert. I smiled and gave him a scratch behind the ears. "Easy, buddy. It's just the wind," I said. But Bruno didn't relax. He stood up again, his eyes locked on something in the distance, and let out a low growl. Not a bark, not a whine. A deep, rumbling growl from his chest. I froze. Bruno never growled unless something was really wrong. I followed his gaze toward the back fence, but I couldn't see anything through the darkness and tall weeds. The wind rustled the leaves above us, and for a moment, everything was still. Then I heard it, a faint, dry hiss. It was so subtle, I thought I'd imagined it. But Bruno tensed beside me, his muscles coiled like springs. That's when I felt it. An overwhelming sense of being watched, stalked. The air had shifted, turned heavier, more threatening. I stepped back slowly, scanning the garden for movement. I could feel my heart beginning to race. The peaceful night had changed into something else entirely, something dangerous. "Bruno?" I whispered, my voice uncertain. He didn't look at me. His eyes were locked onto a patch of tall grass a few feet away. And then the grass moved at first. It was just a ripple, like wind brushing through the blades. But this movement had purpose. Something was slithering beneath, something fast, low, and silent. Then it emerged into the moonlight. A cobra, long, black, and menacing. It slid forward with terrifying calm, lifting it slightly as it came into full view. I froze, unable to move, my brain screaming at me to run, while my body ignored the command. It was just 10 feet away now, and it had seen me. Bruno stood his ground, placing himself between the snake and me. He let out a sharp, aggressive bark, loud enough to shake me out of my trance. But I still didn't move. I couldn't. All I could do was watch. The snake rose higher, its head flaring, body coiling in preparation to strike. I'd never seen one in real life before, only in books or wildlife documentaries. Seeing it here in my backyard, aimed at me, was something else entirely. Then it lunged, but Bruno moved faster. He darted forward with a growl that echoed off the trees, intercepting the cobra mid-strike. He snapped his jaws toward its head, forcing the snake to recoil. The cobra hissed and struck again, and Bruno barely dodged the attack, leaping back but not retreating. He was buying me time. "Bruno, no!" I shouted, finally able to move, but I couldn't run away and leave him there. He was fighting for me. The cobra struck a third time, this time grazing Bruno's shoulder. He yelped in pain, but didn't back down. Blood stained his golden fur, and yet he stood firm, snarling, eyes fixed on the snake. Bruno lunged again and managed to grab the snake near its tail, shaking it violently. The snake writhed, twisted, and finally slipped free, but Bruno had turned the tide. The cobra backed away, hissing, and then finally slithered off toward the woods. Bruno collapsed to the ground, panting heavily. I ran to him, falling to my knees. His breathing was labored, and he was clearly in pain. My hands trembled as I examined his shoulder. The bite wasn't deep, but a bite from a cobra was nothing to take lightly. I scooped him into my arms the best I could and rushed to the truck. My hand was shaking so badly I nearly dropped the keys twice. I drove straight to the emergency vet clinic 20 miles away, praying the whole way that I wasn't too late. They took him in immediately, and for what felt like hours, I sat in the waiting room, hard in my throat. The vet finally emerged, her expression neutral. "He's lucky," she said. "You brought him in just in time." Bruno spent the next 3 days at the clinic, recovering from the venom. The bite hadn't been fatal, thanks to how quickly I got him help. And maybe, as the vet suggested, because the cobra hadn't gotten a full strike. When I brought him home, he was weak but wagging his tail. I carried him inside and laid him on his favorite blanket. For the next week, I barely left his side. I fed him by hand, cleaned his wound, and talked to him like he was a person. Because to me, he was... Something changed in me after that night. It's one thing to know your dog is loyal. It's another thing entirely to watch him throw himself into danger to save your life. That night haunted my dreams for weeks. The hiss of the snake, the blur of movement, Bruno's yelp of pain. It would replay in my mind, sometimes even when I was wide awake. But so did the moment he stood between me and death. People always say dogs are man's best friend. But Bruno was more than that. He was my guardian, my family, my hero. Neighbors heard about what happened and started calling Bruno the snake slayer. They brought him treats, toys, even a custom collar with a little gold badge on it. Bruno soaked in the attention, tail wagging proudly, but he never changed. He was still the same gentle, watchful dog who slept beside my bed and nudged my hand when I forgot to feed him on time. Months passed, but the memory never faded. Every time I stepped into that backyard, I paused, scanned the grass, and remembered the night that changed everything. The garden still looked the same. The moonlight still bathed the trees. But now, it all held a different weight. A reminder. Even now, years later, I still think about that moment. Bruno is older now, his muzzle turning gray, his steps slower. But when I look into his eyes, I still see the same fire, the same courage that made him face death to protect me. And sometimes when the night is too quiet and the wind rustles the grass just right, I find Bruno sitting by the back door, ears twitching, eyes scanning the yard. Still watching, still guarding, because that's who he is. And that's why I owe him everything.